Hello and welcome to my channel. There are times in life that God just may call you to a special assignment, but that does not mean that your assignment will come without its share of difficulty or difficult people or opposition, or even the chance that you just may feel overwhelmed. We're going to talk about it in today's video. Let's go. Sunday. It's Sunday. Nehemiah, the captive cupbearer, rebuilds a nation is our lesson title for Sunday, April 18th. My name is Waynell, Henson. Many of you know me as that Sunday school girl, and I'm excited to be here to review this week's lesson with you. I know that you normally see me on a Thursday, but I've been doing a lot this week, and I'm an auntie with a boy in the house all week. And so, yeah, we've been doing a lot of stuff, but I got my lesson study in, and he's waiting on me to get done recording with you all, because he wants to go to a trampoline park and he's trying to talk me into the trampoline park. But for this moment, I'm excited to be here. I think we have an awesome lesson this week, and I hope that you've enjoyed it as much as I have as we study together about Nehemiah. We've been in the books of the Old Testament looking at studies of the prophets, and there has been so much that we gain in these lessons. The Old Testament for me has so much leadership capability inside of it, and I think it is a wonderful study again for us to gain as we go through and accept the challenges and the assignments that God gives us, knowing that even though they are not without opposition, that God is always on our side. Listen, if you're new around here, allow me to say welcome. You have just joined the largest cyber community of Sunday school students on the World Wide Web. I am so glad that you are here. As I mentioned, we've been here for 6 years in this space. And so at this point, we are just about 36,000 subscribers strong. There are people like you who love God, love his word. We're growing together. And even in this live video tonight, even though this is just my lesson teaching, you see all sorts of friends here who are commenting and who would love to welcome you to this community. So do me a favor. If you're new, make sure that you click the subscribe button. Also, make sure that you click the notifications bell. We don't want you to miss anything when it goes live here, especially our Markup Mondays when we are all here together. I go live at 7:00 p.m. Central Standard Time, and hundreds of people, including Brother Robert, Mom Harris, Asa Sims, Sister Darlene, they join me, Sister Jeanette, they join me for our live session where we read through the lesson, and I share a free template with you that you're able to use to prepare yourself for the study of the lesson. And then you either come back here to this video where I share the review with you, or if you want to wait till Sunday, I am still going live on Sundays at 9:45 a.m. Central Standard Time for those who are not back into your traditional brick and mortar settings at this point. So I'm still doing that. Would love to see you, but we're so glad that you are here. Before we get into the study this week, please remember that the Step Summit 2021 is open for registration. If you are a teacher, if you're a Christian education leader, a superintendent, a secretary, even a pastor, there's going to be something for everyone. And this conference is always such a great blessing. This is our 3rd year. And last year, even in a virtual space, there were nearly 400 people who were a part of what is the premier Sunday school Christian education leadership conference. So I hope that you will visit Step Summit, that's with 2 S's, stepsummit.com, and get registered. Those first 100 VIP gifts, I believe, have already been claimed, but I do absolutely want you here. Hi, hair twin, Sister Hazel. Good evening to you. All right, we are going to go ahead and take a look at our lesson title again, which is Nehemiah, the captive cupbearer rebuilds a nation. The Bible basis is Nehemiah chapter 2, verses 11 through 20. The Bible truth: Nehemiah rallies the Israelites to rebuild the walls and reinstitute Sabbath worship. Our memory verse is verse 17. And the lesson aim is that we will analyze why Nehemiah restored the walls of Jerusalem and revived the Sabbath law, appreciate Nehemiah's feelings and behavior in restoring the wall and reforming Jewish worship, and identify ways to restore worn parts of the faith community and revive traditions that honor God. And I don't know about you, but in some ways I am a traditionalist. I love innovation and I love new things, but I also believe in holding on to the things that God has given, the things that are foundational. And those are important to me. So as I read the story of Nehemiah, who looked back on his own community and saw what used to be and felt a burden from God to do something about an area that was so broken, I can absolutely identify with wanting to be a person of action and wanting to be a difference maker. As we are starting to take a quick look at our background, let's do that first, because in this particular text, I can tell you that although we begin at verse 11 of chapter 2, like much of what we need comes from chapter 1 and even verses 1 through 10. I was very moved by the background in this lesson. So if you look at our Old Testament study, you know that as the children of Israel entered into the promised land, they were there. There was difficulty. I'm going to speed this story up, and that the 12 tribes at some point split up, and that the 10 tribes that went to the north were called the northern kingdom. That was Israel. And then there were the 2 tribes, Benjamin and Judah, that were the southern kingdom, and they were known as Judah. Let's talk about the northern kingdom for just a bit. When they went north, things changed. They changed, their personal pursuit of God. They were more after their fleshly desires. They changed the feast days. They made their own worship altars. And they even changed the ceremonial requirements for the priests. They had like more than 200 years of bad leadership, what I'll call wicked king leadership. And God sent prophet after prophet to them, because remember, it was always God's desire to have relationship with his people, even when his people got off track. And I was about to say, get off track. Even today, when we get off track, it is God's desire to get us back to him. And so he provides those people to nudge us and get us back, and he'll send a word. He always did that for Israel. Well, ultimately, the Assyrians conquered the northern kingdom. Now, let's talk about the southern kingdom. That's Benjamin and Judah. Now, they stayed in Jerusalem, and Jerusalem was the place where God chose to put his name. Very important to remember that. And they had a little bit better leadership than the northern kingdom. But ultimately, they too were given to the idolatry of the land. They were pulled by the people. Remember a few weeks back when we even studied with Moses, right? He was trying to warn them before they went into the promised land. Don't mix up with those people. You're going to get there. You're going to see a lot of stuff. It's going to be like kind of interesting. Don't mix in with that. But they didn't remember what they were told. And so ultimately, they too had to come under the judgment of God. As a result, the Babylonians, led by King Nebuchadnezzar, conquered them, and they were taken captive. Now, their captivity, again, was the punishment that God would use to get them back on track, but it wasn't intended to last forever. It was a 70-year experience for them, but about 68 years in, the Medo-Persians actually defeated the Babylonians, and they were in charge. We needed to know that, because that kind of gives us our setup for where we are as we take a look at Nehemiah. When King Cyrus overthrew the Babylonians, only a remnant of people would go home to Jerusalem. It wouldn't be everyone who left. And what would happen would be the foundation of the temple would be poured. They would start to focus on Jerusalem and rebuilding. But then they decided, well, we're rebuilding a temple, but we're out here still living in our tents. We need to focus on our own homes. And they began to focus. And one of the prophets even said, how is it that you focus on your own home while the Lord's house lies in waste? As we look at this, and I mentioned that several prophets God uses to get Israel back on track, to get them focused again, to get the worship of God restored. And as I was looking at this background, it's kind of interesting for me. If you go back and look at various leaders that you've had, leaders are different, but hopefully you can look back and you will kind of be able to say, okay, from this leader, I learned structure. From this leader, I learned how to love people. From this leader, every leader has their thing. I kind of looked at that with the prophets. So Zechariah and Haggai, if you look at their words, they really pushed the people to prioritize God. So that's why I was even telling you with the prioritization of the rebuilding of the temple, even over their own home. So that was kind of their push. Last week, we looked at Ezra. And Ezra, as he led that second group back to Israel, about 2,000 people, his focus was restoring and reestablishing the temple and all of the worship of the land. And so that was his contribution. As we look at Nehemiah, He's looking at the city in its totality, and especially the rebuilding of the physical structure, the walls, the gates of the city, everything about him. And he's on the scene about 11 years after Ezra. Remember, we just had Ezra last week. So this is about 11 years later. Let's talk about Nehemiah. He is a man who was called to do something great for God. We talked about a calling in our quarter study last quarter. And you may remember that I said that a calling is something that God gives you that makes you a solution to someone's problem. And absolutely, Nehemiah is a solution to the problem of his people whose land lies in great waste. He also has a burden, and that kind of sat with me for a bit, no pun intended, because he looked at this thing and everybody else saw what he saw, but Nehemiah was not okay with it. He cared when so many others around him did not care. In fact, when he looked back at Jerusalem, it was heartbreaking when he thought about the land and his people and all that had been given up in the captivity. He was actually born in captivity. He had never even known the land, and yet there was something about it that broke him on the inside to see the land lie in complete waste. And so he feels a passion to do something. Now, in his day job, Nehemiah was he had a special assignment. He was a worker in the king's court. He was actually a cupbearer. I laughed a little bit about the cupbearer because I think it was to be annoying, but my father used to, he would do it to my mother especially. He would grab her cup at the dinner table and he would take a drink out of it and she would holler, "Wayne, stop." And he would say, "I just want to make sure it's not poisonous for you." Again, I think he was just trying to irritate her, but in Nehemiah's case, he literally did have to take the cup and the food, anything else before the king was able to put it in his mouth. Nehemiah would take some of it before to ensure that no one was attempting to poison the king to cause him any harm. Again, we need to remember that Nehemiah at this point has never been to Jerusalem. Yet God has given him a burden for it, and specifically a burden to restore it. The city had been destroyed and laying, the Bible says, in waste for many, many years. When they were conquered, the city was stormed, the walls were burned with fire, the gates were burned. And if you've ever seen fire damage, it is devastating to look at, and it is difficult to overcome. And at this point, the walls and everything are at a place of destruction that no one has felt led to do anything about what they see. But for Nehemiah, essentially what should be his heritage is an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment to his people. It's an embarrassment of the God that he says that he serves. And so he cares about how Jerusalem looked, and he cared about the safety of the people who lived there. He cared about the reputation of the city. And so he goes to the king. This is all back in chapter 1. And he goes to the king, chapter 1 and chapter 2, verses 1 through 10. The king is Artaxerxes. And we need to know that as we get even up to our printed text, because our printed text tells us in verses 11 and 12, "So I came to Jerusalem and was there 3 days. And I arose in the night, I and some few men with me. Neither told I any man what my God had put in my heart to do at Jerusalem. Neither was there any beast with me, save the beast that I rode upon." Well, let's kind of look at what's happened, because we clearly know when we jump into the lesson that he is ready to get into action. But what has happened up to this point? Why is Nehemiah so confident and ready to move? What has happened that's made him say, "I am ready to take on the task"? Well, when God gives us an assignment, it doesn't always mean that we go jump right in feet first. And in Nehemiah's case, several things had already happened. Let's go back to chapter 1. If you look there, you will see that when he recognized the brokenness of the city, the first thing that he did was he prayed. He prayed, and not only does he pray to God, he doesn't just ask him for things, but he confesses sin first. In fact, in verses 6 and 7, he's not finger pointing. This is kind of like Ezra last week. He says, "I and my family, we're a part of the issue. We have all sinned here." But he's appealing to God. Even though we didn't do right, I know that if we come to you in this way, I know that there's an opportunity for things to be right. So he asked God in verse 11, pick me, use me. And he even asked God, if you use me and help me, if you will help me, I will absolutely do this thing. The next thing he does is he asks God to have favor with the king. Now, I mentioned Artaxerxes, and I've already told you, he's not a good king. And Nehemiah knows that before he goes in. He knows that he has a thing that he wants to do. And as wonderful as it is, as he looks through what needs to take place, there are hurdles. There's things that he's got to go through. And you know what? Those are leadership nuggets for us. So many times you may have a great idea, but you're going to have to sell it to your manager at work. You're going to have to sell it to someone in your family. You may even need to convince your pastoral leader that it's a great idea, but you've got to be able to do that. And God can help you, but you've got to have the strategy and the wisdom to know how to move. And here's Nehemiah saying that I will know how to move and I'll know what to do if you help me. So he asked for favor with the king. That's in verse 11. Now, by the time we get to chapter 2, about 4 months have passed. And that is important because in 4 months, even though he has a burden, even though he sees something needs to be done and wants to do something about it, even though he has prayed, there is no action that's taken place yet in verses 1 through 10. 4 months have passed. Here was an aha for me, that believing and having a burden continue even after prayer is done. Sometimes God may respond immediately, and there are times that it may be a little while before God actually responds on that matter. But if indeed you are believing God for it, and it is a burden that he has given you, then it is not something that you just walk away from having a tantrum because God didn't respond right now. And Nehemiah holds on to what he believes. In fact, since several of you are online with me, you can tell me, what do you do? How do you wait? What is the proper way to wait when you have prayed? When you believed God, you are believing God. How do you wait? Here's one of my ahas. That in my waiting, I want to make sure that I don't get discouraged. That while you're waiting, don't lose your passion for the work. And then secondly, be productive while you wait. Plan for the yes. If you are believing God for a thing, listen, if you are praying to God and you're ready for your new home, while you're waiting for God to say yes, go ahead and set up your Zillow account. Go ahead and set up your searches. Know what type of house you want. Know your price range. How many bedrooms do you want? What zip code do you want to be in? When you're believing God for a yes, if you're ready to start your business, start creating your business plan. I don't care if you don't have the loan yet from the bank. Start moving and thinking like an entrepreneur. If you are trying to work toward a financial goal, start putting money up and saving until God says yes. So there is a way that we wait. And yes, Mom Harris, while we wait, we can absolutely keep praying. And in Nehemiah's case, he doesn't lose heart because some time has passed, and he continues to go to work every day, putting one foot in front of the other. He actually goes and he's doing his regular day job. He takes the wine into the king. And on that particular day, Nehemiah is unusually sad. He's never been this sad before. He says that I was never like this before, because it was actually a problem to go into the king's presence and have a countenance that was broken or sad. That would have been a reason to have been banished. But on this day, Nehemiah is unusually sad, but the king is unusually kind because he's not a nice man. But on this particular day, he says, what's wrong? You don't look sick, but I can tell just by your face that there is something that is wrong. I want to pause right there because we keep talking about the fact that Nehemiah has something in his mind and heart to do. He's already prayed to God. He knows these things that are in front of him, and you never know how God is going to set up your moment. This is one of those moments. The king has put an open-ended question out there. A closed-ended question is a yes or no. Are you happy? Yes. Are you sad? No. Those are closed-ended questions. Here's an open-ended question. He asks, what's wrong? And without hesitation, Nehemiah begins to speak. And you know what? He's truthful about what he is troubled with. It is his land. It's as he looks back at the land of his ancestors and sees that it's broken. He wants to do something about it. And as he explains this all to the king in a manner that is truthful, I love this. The king in verse 4 says, in the New Living Translation, well, how can I help you? That is the answer that so many of us are waiting on. God is trying to align us with the right people, the right resources. We just need one good yes. And Nehemiah has that in this moment. Now, also notice this, that all of this happens quickly. And so I'm going to ask you, whatever that thing is that you're believing God for, are you ready for your moment? Tomorrow, if the investor showed up and asked you what was needed for your business, besides just telling them a dollar amount, can you give them your vision? Can you tell them what you want to do? If you're believing God, even for a spouse, have you put yourself in position? Are you ready to talk about what does life look like? How do you partner? What do you want to do together? Are you ready for that moment where God opens up that yes? Now, in this moment, check this out. Nehemiah he prays very quickly. Even before he speaks to the king, he prays first. And I love this because there is such humility for me with Nehemiah. He has this open door with the king, this open moment, and yet he prays very quickly. Now, if you look at it, you will see that there's humility demonstrated, but it's not a public prayer. It's not a verbal prayer. There are going to be times that you're going to have to be able to connect with God quickly, and you may have to connect with him in your heart. And that's what happens with Nehemiah. And I love it because that says to me that he had relationship, that he could connect that quickly with God. And he was able to make what I call the big ask with humility. He replies, if you are pleased with me, your servant, send me to Judah to rebuild the city where my ancestors are buried. Now, the queen is sitting beside the king, and we can conclude that she would have been a person of influence, and maybe she could have weighed in on whether he would get the yes or the no. But check this out. Nehemiah gets exactly what he asked for. A man with a plan gets exactly what he needs. What does he need from the king? He needs three things. He asked for his permission, he asked for protection, and he asked for provision. He needed the king's authority to move. He needed to be able to travel safely. He needed a letter in case anybody asked him any questions. And he needed materials. I don't have the beams. I don't have the nails. I don't have whatever. I need everything I need to do the building work. God gave him favor. And with the Lord's help, by praying in that moment, the king granted him everything that he needed. In fact, he gave him more. The Bible says that he's able to do exceeding abundantly above what we ask or think. So he got what he asked for and more. In fact, verse 9 says the king says that I should add, and had sent along army officers and horsemen to protect me. So he got much more. We also find out, though, that just hearing the plan wasn't without its opposition. There's not a beam that's been put up yet, not a nail put in, nothing is going on. But the idea, the conversation is already being opposed by Sanballat and Tobiah, and they are governors, and we'll see them again in just a moment. So that's what brings us up to our printed text that we just read. And so Nehemiah has now been in Jerusalem, and he's been there for 3 days. He's been thinking about how this plan was going to work. He's kind of crossed that hurdle now with the king. That was the first thing. And now he's got to actually see what is going on. And it took some time for him to move. Again, everything that God promises doesn't happen just like this. So he had 4 months between the prayer and the approval from the king, and then the time to get things together and the time to travel. And now he's here. And at this moment, he doesn't just jump right in. Now, you can just about assume that people have seen a caravan traveling. They know the intentions. And he's got to be careful about who sees and who knows what. He doesn't jump right in. He spends time just observing. And y'all know how I feel about observing. Sometimes you need to sit and look. How does a thing make you feel? What do you see? What does it remind you of? What is God saying to you? So in these 3 days, he just surveys. And that was an aha for me, that there is value in observation. Sometimes you just need to look. I share with people all the time. I am an introvert. I know that y'all are going to dispute that, but I am. And when I go into a space, when I go into a room or a new setting, I am always observing my surroundings. Who is there? What are the people like? What can I discern? So there is value in observing. He made an observation and he put himself in a position to see and hear and to know how God wanted him to move. That's what observation does for us. Not only does he observe, but we see as he begins to move that he moves with discretion. He moves at night. He moves when most people should be asleep. He moves in a way he travels light. He doesn't have a lot of people with him, and he only has one animal. Why one animal? Well, because we don't need a whole stampede going on. It was supposed to be a quiet look-see at night. He doesn't talk to a lot of people about what's going on. Now, he's waited on the Lord. Here's what Nehemiah knows, and here's why we don't have to get in a hurry. Up to this point, even though he doesn't know exactly how everything will work out, what he knows is that God has not failed him. There was no reason for him to be anxious or to feel impulsive. He could afford to be conservative and not to do too much talking. He doesn't tell his plans. He doesn't talk to a bunch of people. And why is that? It is because talking often puts us in a position to move according to people's opinions and their emotions. If you're not careful, other people will talk and talk until they talk you out of what you know God has called you to do. And so he doesn't share that with anyone at all. As he moves on in verses 13 and 14, what he sees as he goes out by night and he goes and observes all these locations we see are the various gates. And every single gate that he goes to, I use this word, the city is trashed. It is a complete mess. Every part of it, every gate is damaged. It was so bad that even his animal had difficulty getting through the rubble. It was almost something that would have hindered his plans, his intentions to get through everything. But he goes on. Why? Because Nehemiah wants to get a clear picture of exactly what is ahead. The job is huge, but he is getting a picture of what is ahead. And even though the plans seem like they will be hindered in some way, he doesn't seem to lose heart or lose faith in God. He's already gotten through big hurdles before. So what would stop God from getting him through even the hurdle of the rubble and this mess that he was in? As he finishes and he completes the survey, he turns around, and the only thing he really knows when he goes back is this is a big job. Like, I knew it before, but now I know it. I had an idea of what I thought it may be, but now that I've observed and I've seen, and I even had a difficult time, it is everything that I thought it would be and more. So verses 17 and 18 says that as he gets back, remember before he hasn't shared with leaders, but now he's ready to talk. And he says to them, hey, y'all see what I see? You're looking around here just like I am. Y'all know this is bad. The city is in ruins. The gates are destroyed with fire. But here's the thing. Why is Nehemiah talking at this point? Because he's ready to move. God has allowed him to survey and to see he's ready. But he also knows this, that the job is so big, there is no way that he can accomplish it alone. But look at how this influential leader uses his space, his place, and his voice. Such strategy in here. He uses the words, let us. First of all, y'all see what I see. You can't be okay with this. You all are leaders. You can't be okay with this. So since I'm not okay with it and you're not okay with it, let us do something about what we see here. We can't just sit around and see this and not do something about it. And when I read this, it read like a rallying cry. And anytime there is a rally, it is an appeal to get people to join you in the work. And inside of a rally, if you want to know how to grow your ministry, if you want to know how to grow your Sunday school, if you're trying to grow your business or your brand, you get excited about the work you're doing, invest yourself in the work you're doing, and then invest the people in purpose. And together we pour ourselves into a purpose that is greater than us. And that's what he's asking for here. Let us get together and let us do work. Now, leaders, notice here that Nehemiah is a part of the solution. He's not assigning them on what to do. You just go do this and I'll sit here because I've taken a look. And no, he is saying, I am a part of the fix with you. Leaders, are a part of the solution. And he was personally committed to being a part of strategy and solution. And if you look, there was the rally call, let us do it. And he has so much passion and he is so persuasive that these leaders respond, let us join you. Let us do this. We do want to do it together. And as he talks to them, he lets them know that this plan is doable. Leaders, even when you have the biggest job in front of you, the people will take on your spirit. And if you believe the job can be done, the people will believe that the job will be done. But what do we learn here again in verse 19? Once again, not a beam has been lifted, not a nail has been hammered, but those men again, Sanballat and Tobias, Gresham, they all hear of the plan. All they did was hear of the plan. And once again, their response is negativity. We've got to know that as we set out to do great things for God, everybody is not going to be on your side. You should anticipate opposition. In fact, I almost say that if it's too easy, you might need to go back and make sure that you are in the right space. It is not always going to be without its challenges. And what were the challenges? Well, these men, they laughed at them. They spoke ill of Nehemiah. They asked questions. They accused him of rebelling against the king. What is this thing? Who do you think you are? What is it? You think you're going to rebuild this? We've been laying here this long. The walls been burned this long. And now you come in here, you're going to rebuild the walls? Yeah, right. What does the king say about that? And in verse 20, Nehemiah responds, and he responds in a way that is so much bigger than probably I would have responded, and probably in a way that many of you would have responded, because remember, he is carrying a letter from the king. He already has the authorization of the king. He already has affirmation and support. Sometimes your haters are always speaking from a place that they don't know. You don't know everything that you think you do. And yes, these leaders, Sister Sharon, are problem solvers. And Nehemiah has hope and he has confidence in the face of opposition. That is a aha for me, an aha that you can have hope and confidence in the face of opposition. And so he doesn't respond with his letter like, ha, got my letter. That's not what he does at all. He says, I'm going to do this. And we're going to be successful. And it has nothing to do with you all, but the God of heaven, he is the one that's going to insert himself in what we've got going on. He is going to prosper us. And as a result, because he is going to empower us and he is going to equip us, and because he's bigger than you, and he's bigger than the king, and he's bigger than the opposition, and he's bigger than the difficulty, he is going to help us succeed. That is such a powerful attitude as you approach the difficulties in your life. If you don't respond in your flesh and don't respond to the naysayers and the haters, but always respond in the confidence of the God that you know and serve, and know that you are empowered by him. And so they go ahead and they're prepared to get started, and they let him know. And when we are successful, you will have no parts, no claim, no right in the work that has been done. And that's a reference to Ezra chapter 2, verses 59 and 60. I give you those in the TSSG notes, which I'm sorry, were in the comment link in the description box down below if you wanted the notes from this lesson. But I think the big ideas that we're to take away, and these are my key learnings, are that when God stirs something in your heart to do, he is going to complete the work. When God gives it to you, he is going to open up the way. He is going to make the provision. He's going to connect you with the right people. He is going to give you the strength that you need. And remember, everything does not happen on our time, but we've got to trust always God's plan and his time. Know that you can face big obstacles honestly without becoming overwhelmed or discouraged. Remember that Nehemiah talks directly to the king. He doesn't hold anything back, and he's honest about that space. Don't give up when situations are difficult, when they're demanding, or when they are discouraging. Remember, difficulty and demanding and discouraging are even the tools that the enemy will use to just make us stop. But always be reminded that the God that you serve is on your side. Always remember that no matter how it looks, God is able. And you can type that in the comments if you're on the live with me, because that is such a powerful reminder that God is able no matter what. We are never, and this is a personal note of mine, I say this often, we are never in a hurry to do the wrong thing. So time is our friend. Investigation, observation can be a benefit. We're never in a hurry to do the wrong thing. Finally, remember the benefit of the hand of God. And multiple times, Nehemiah talks about that. The hand of God is on me. The hand of God is good upon me. It is strong on me. And when you remember that God's hand is on you, remember that his hand protects you. His hand can bring you into the right presence, and his hand always gives you the right provision. That's our lesson for this week. I didn't quite do it in 30 minutes, but I hope that there was something in here that was helpful for you all. Again, if you have things in your notes that you want me to add to mine, go ahead and drop them in the comments. And don't forget, since you're here, to thumbs up, like this video. That helps us in our rankings here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe if you're a newbie. I love everybody so much. And I'm going to see you in Sunday school. And don't forget to pray for me while I'm out here hanging out with Nephew Boy on a Friday night. Love you all so much. Have a good evening. This bag makes a great gift for teachers, and of course there's a church school version as well. Visit my Etsy store for this and other great items, and look down below this video for t-shirts for all ages and sizes.
Changing the way you see Sunday school with that Sunday.